Welcome back to Naked History Debrief. The main episode was a stack martyrdom, myth making, courtly love, mass marketing. This is where we take one layer, specifically the courtly love, and hold it up next to the thing it gets mistaken for constantly medieval marriage. Because courtly love is a love poem, and medieval marriage is a ledger. Courtly love is I long for you from afar. Medieval marriage is we need to survive the winter and also legally clarify who gets the cow. And if that sounded like a joke, it is, but it's also the whole point. So we're going to be ripping off the fig leaf of the most persistent Valentine myth of all, that the medieval past was basically a candlelit romance montage. Spoiler, it wasn't. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the definitions right so we can stop being haunted by the same vibes every single February. Let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? So first off, we're going to do some corrections and clarifications. This isn't quite naked regrets just yet, but it is something that needs to be said. So first, courtly love is not how medieval people generally loved. It's a highly conventionalized code, an elite literary and social style that prescribes how lovers and ladies are supposed to behave. Think rules, performance, longing, and a devotion as a kind of status language. Secondly, medieval marriage, especially among elites, was often less about finding your soulmate and more about alliances, inheritance, property, kin networks, and stability. That doesn't mean that affection didn't exist. It does mean, however, though, that the institution wasn't primarily built around romance. And third, the association of February 14th with romantic love is late, the most strongly emerging in the 14th and 15th century as courtly love ideas flourished and get linked to St. Valentine's Day feast day in literature. So when Valentine's Day tells you it is ancient romance, what it often means is medieval elite romance as genre, later mass marketed. Now here's the misunderstanding Valentine's Day sells us every year. It treats romance like a natural purpose of marriage, and it treats marriage like the ultimate proof of romance. But historically, those two things were not always the same lane. Courtly love, longing, coded devotion, poetic suffering is often a performance, a refined way to desire, a way to signal status. Marriage, especially in medieval society, is often a framework, a household unit, a legal and economic structure designed to move property, labor, and legitimacy forward in time. Now, courtly love promises love without the logistics. Marriage is the logistics with feelings sometimes included. So if you ever feel like Valentine's Day turns your relationship into a graded assignment, it's because it's trying to force a genre of courtly love onto real life. Now, what is the difference between courtly love myths and actual lived marriage? Well, courtly love is typically longing at a distance. Distance is the secret ingredient here because distance makes everything look noble. Distance means your lover is pure idea. Distance means you can suffer beautifully without dealing with chores. Distance means the story stays romantic because it never has to become a household. But medieval households were not poetry workshops themselves. Most people lived in a work and family units where daily life was labor, risk management, and survival. A marriage isn't just two people, it's two kin networks and everything they own, owe, and hope to inherit. So when courtly love says, I will prove my devotion through suffering, the household replies, well, that's nice. Also, the roof is leaking. Can you please fix it? Courtly love, if you think about it, is I wrote you a poem. Marriage is we need a plan for the winter. And if you're thinking, okay, but Did medieval people ever really marry for love? Well, sometimes, yes. I mean, humans are human, but the most important point is structural. Courtly love becomes famous precisely because it offers a story where love feels autonomous and sacred, uncomplicated by property, family, and law, which is exactly why it's so easy to sell in the modern era. Because modern Valentine's Day doesn't just sell affection, it sells the feeling that love should be pure. It should be a dramatic thing that proves itself through ritual gestures, which can be sweet and also become a trap. Because once romance becomes a script, it also becomes a standard. And standards create shame. Now, before we pivot into This Week in History, I did want to drop a few Valentine's Day tidbits. Not for trivia's sake, but little anchors that can show how the courtly love vibe got really glued to the date. The first one is Chaucer. Chaucer is a big reason why the Romance association sticks. It's widely noted in the literary circle around Geoffrey Chaucer, helping himself attach February 14th to love celebration. The Parliament of Fowls is one of the earliest known Valentine poems, with the whole bird chooses their mate image. Second up, one of the earliest surviving Valentine's messages was often cited, comes from Charles, Duke of Orleans, writing while imprisoned in the Tower of London. And that's the vibe at its purest form. Love as a letter, longing as an art, and romance in confinement. And last up, the Lupercalia thing, because everyone's uncle on Facebook loves it. Now, Lupercalia was a Roman festival around the 15th of February. It was real, and it was not the cute origin story that most people want. But there is little concrete evidence that it turns directly into Valentine romance traditions. Historians more consistently emphasize that Valentine's romantic connotations arrive much later in the medieval period. Now, those three tidbits are enough to show the mechanism of the holiday. A church date exists, a romance genre flourishes, and literature links them. And culture repeats until it feels eternal. Next up is This Week in History for the week of February 16th. So we're going to keep it relevant to the themes. Love script, social pressure, martyrdom, mythology, and a way that dates turn into meaning. So on February 16th, the apology card hangover occurs in the UK. Now, I will say this one is modern, but it is hilariously on theme. A UK card company analysis reported that February 16th is the peak day for I'm sorry cards, 2 days after Valentine's Day when expectations collide with reality. That's definitely courtly love versus household logistics all in one statistic. On the 17th of February, Giordano Bruno is executed in 1600. Now, it's not Valentine romantic, but thematically aligned, a public execution turning into a symbol. Martyrdom, memory, meaning attached to death. History loves transforming bodies into messages. And riding off of that, on the February 21st, Joan of Arc's trial begins in 1431. Again, it's not romance, but it's in the same historical wiring. It goes over how institutions shape stories and how public narratives get built around individuals. Plus, it's the medieval world in high definition. Law, power, faith, and the machinery that decides whose story gets told and how. And because it's Valentine adjacent, we're going to have a nod to February 14th as the date that keeps absorbing meaning. Two very prevalent instances of historical events on Valentine's Day. Honestly, the one that most people will associate, if they don't associate the flowers and candy, is the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, where Al Capone had set the brutal murder of 7 members of Bug Morin's North Side gang in Chicago, effectively securing all of the bootlegging rights for Chicago in the middle of Prohibition. So if you ever feel like a date has a personality, it's because humans keep stuffing dates with meaning until they can't help but feel haunted. Okay, as we're wrapping up, we had a listener reflection for the main episode, and I want to give you a little bit of an extra one here. So here's the question. What is a romantic rule that you inherited that you've had to unlearn? The thing you thought love was supposed to look like, until life looked you in the eye and said, okay, but who's doing the dishes? Maybe it's the rule that love has to be expensive. Maybe it's the rule that big gestures matter more than the daily reliability. Maybe it's the rule that if your partner doesn't read your mind, they don't care. If you want a lighter version as well, what's the weirdest Valentine expectation you've ever encountered? Not the sweetest, the weirdest. The one that made you go, is this romance or am I being studied? Send those in wherever you interact with the show, because I genuinely love seeing how people disentangle inherited scripts from actual affection. Honoring the past doesn't mean protecting its lies, and honoring love doesn't mean obeying a script, especially a script written by medieval elites and sold back to you by modern capitalism. Courtly love is a genre. Medieval marriage is a structure. And Valentine's Day is what happens when a genre becomes a seasonal ritual. So keep what's real. Keep the note, keep the small ritual, keep that private joke. Keep especially the I saw this and I thought of you. Throw away the pressure, the performance, the idea that love only counts if it comes with receipts. It'll make you and your partner a lot happier in the long run. So, thank you so much for listening to the debrief. I have been Dylan Gassaway, and this has been Naked History. I do want to let you know, for the next main episode, we'll be covering the Dancing Plague of 1518. Now, I don't want to get too much into it, but I very much assure you, it's not just dance for the Wii medieval style. So, until then, I hope you enjoyed listening. I hope you enjoyed your Valentine's Day. Hopefully everybody got their chocolates, their flowers, maybe even a historical book or two. But if not, welcome here. I love having you here, and you are my Valentine. So thank you again so much for listening. I've been Dylan Gassaway, and this has been Naked History. Always remember to stay weird, stay curious, and stay naked. Historically speaking, of course. Have a good one, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.